All right, another handicapping video this week. It's the SA Anita Derby, one of many of the 3-year-old preps. I have Scott Shapiro here. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Ann, how you doing?
Good. Welcome back. Have a nice time in Vegas.
I did. I feel 6 years older between all of the handicapping and lack of sleep, and then going out a little too much after the tournament was over. It's definitely a lot of work, the Horse Player World Series. I guess if you're doing it right, at least. But it was good to see. I know some of your optics users did well, and it was good to see some of our friends as well, which obviously are one and the same in many cases, but do well and cash. And I think even Brent got fourth place, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
absolutely. Yeah, we had good showing from everybody. I didn't play this year. I got to go out and see everybody on Saturday, so it was kind of nice just going out there and not having to do the work. But I've done it many times before, and it's a total grind. And part of that was my reason to not play this year was finishing up with Gulfstream and doing the notes and a couple other tracks starting up. I'm just like, I can't get the setback right now, so it's a total grind. Enjoy your week of recovery. It's needed.
Yeah, and yes, it's not for the weak of heart in terms of, I'm sure, half the field at least, was able to put forth their effort without doing as much work, and I bet most of them weren't as successful. But yeah, a lot of races, all optionals every day, so you really have to look at least a little bit at every single race at 7 tracks. It was a good competition. Like to see like many others mentioned, like to see the prize pool divvied up a little differently without being so top heavy. But other than that, I think that it is a good test of a handicapper because it is 3 days and does let you pick races as if you're, betting at the window, and at least in the respect that you're not, forced into certain races.
Definitely, it does reward consistency, and I think overall it does it reward hard work. So speaking of hard work, we have this race here. We got a big full field. Looks an interesting race. I'm kind of coming into this video session a little less prepared than normal. I handicapped this. I probably spent like 5 minutes on the race just to make sure I was kind of familiar, but kind of handicapping it live. So I've got the plot pulled up right now. So a couple things just sort of noticing right off the bat. We have a fire contention. Looks like there's 6 horses that are in quadrant 1. Again, this is standard, so some of those might be, kind of stretch out horses. Well, as we dig into it, we'll find out. But seems like a lot of horses that want to be on or near the lead, and then, some kind of mid-pack closer type horses. So, kind of separates that way. As I switch over to surface distance, Scott, is that kind of how you saw it? I think the pace scenario needs to kind of dig into it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. To have a race not as big as the 20-horse Derby field, but much bigger than any of these horses in Southern California have faced, for the most part at least. So it'll be a lot about trip. Everyone's not going to get their perfect trip like they have in other spots, with 6, 7, 8-horse fields. So maybe the winner, or maybe someone will have to win this with less than perfect conditions. So that's interesting. But it does look like it could be cluttery. It doesn't, the speed rating is only 8 on here. However, like you said, the fire contention should make it bunched up front at least.
Yeah, and then just also I just click over to surface distance, so it just kind of pops out that the 10, the 12, the 13 all want to be on the lead early. So those horses breaking from the outside seem like they've got to kind of go and use, and that might heat the pace up a little bit, just kind of given that scenario. So it's kind of interesting. We'll go through horse by horse and kind of reference back the pace, because I agree with you. Like you said, it would be more of a miracle than anything for a horse to work out a perfect trip. So it kind of seems like it would set up for the best horse on this given day. Is that okay with you to kind of go horse by horse? We'll go sort of numerical order.
Yeah, definitely. We've done a number of these so far, never out here in Southern California, so I'm looking forward to diving into the horses that I know best.
Right. Okay, so let's go term of art, and I'll back up a little bit because I I was telling Scott I'm using the optics grid that's in development right now, so it might look a little bit different. I'm kind of spot checking it to make sure, but I kind of like it. We've got the workouts that are posted alongside a couple other features. So pretty cool. So the rail horse term of art, this is a horse last time I thought, maybe he was going to, had a chance of getting a setup, was still an outsider. A horse that seems to be like slowly moving forward and literally slowly moving forward, but a horse that I just think will kind of get better with age and better with distance. Again, it's gonna come down to trip, but I think a horse that's kind of moving forward and gonna get the distance. I could see this horse being a contender and probably a price. Do you dislike this horse as much as last time?
Well, I thought that was a good call by you last time, without a doubt. The horse ran a career best and took advantage of tiring rivals late. I could see potentially the same situation occurring, but I actually have this horse regressing probably off that effort. However, the distance isn't going to be a problem for this horse. As you pointed out last time, this horse seems to have no problem going, a route of ground. So that could work in his favor, as well as a potential hot pace. So I think he's going to need a hot pace to be even close to hitting the board. I'm not a fan of this horse really in general, but I could see your stance if you want to use the horse underneath maybe.
I want to know what about this horse makes you think he's going to regress off that last race?
Well, as looking at the thoroughgraphs, he moved forward 3 points, I believe. I don't have them in front of me, but I did look them over here. So generally speaking, that could lead to a regress. If you're someone to look at Buyer speed figures, he moved forward 8 points. Yeah, they can. It's not a definite thing with these 3-year-olds that they can't keep moving forward though. So a little it's a little bit predictive, but he has moved forward quite a bit in each of his last 2 starts. I'm not sure if he has another move forward. I've just always thought of this horse as a plotter too. So
yeah, I looking at optics figures, the numbers are a little bit tighter than I think what you're looking at. Going back to the sham, that was again in the slop. We have it at a 73, and then an 86 in the Robert B. Lewis, and then an 89 in the San Felipe. So they're not. It doesn't look as dramatic of a jump, but I would expect this race. He needs to come forward a little bit, and I think that this is kind of a grindy type horse that gets the extra distance and maybe just kind of runs to his competition, and that's enough to just kind of move forward. But if it does kind of cluster up with a lot of those horses, bunching up on the front end, this horse is going to be able to save ground. So from a trip perspective, and again, I would expect a price. I think it's another horse that at least should be there to hit the board. The number 2 horse, Reach the World, and this horse is coming out of an optional claiming race along with the number 3, and I just kind of felt, we don't have morning lines because we're kind of doing this a little bit early. I kind of felt like both these horses, we'll talk about them individually, but kind of seem to be like the now horses, like people that aren't trusting horses out of the San Felipe will kind of look at one of these two, and I thought they both ran great last time, and fit on figures as far as the rest of the field. Are you kind of looking for a new face?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is the way I see it, that optional claiming race might have been the best prep out here. The San Felipe was, other than the winner, Mastery, who unfortunately won't be around, did not really do much for me outside of the winner. I thought that optional claiming race, as you said, kind of has the now horses. You'll see a third horse in here when we speak about the number 11 Irish Freedom, who was working well in that race and just didn't run all that well. Maybe he needed the race off the bench. But I'm a fan of this too, Reach the World. I think during that optional claiming race, he was in between horses, so it wasn't an ideal trip. So maybe showed he can take a little adversity or a little bit of a less than perfect voyage. And I have no doubt that this horse can get the distance. And I just like the way he's moving forward. And I like that Mike Smith, the Mr. Big Race, is stuck around on him. So there's a lot of things, in my opinion, to like about Reach the World in this race and moving forward at longer distances.
I agree, and kind of saw the same thing as far as the trip. Keywords here: gate, slog. So it was fresh the gate, broke slow, did have traffic close, and then BTL. So kind of a better than looked neck defeat. We'll move to the outside horse coming out of the same race, Battle of Midway, who was able to win that day, kind of got the jump on Reach the World, a little bit cleaner trip and a great ride. Did get caught wide on the first turn, but Jock was able to recover. You prefer the 2 over the 3, just kind of based on the trip?
It's close. Without really getting a final dive into predicting yet, both of these horses are 2 of the ones that interest me most. Like you suggested, maybe I won't be the only one for sure. It's interesting that Corey Nakatani takes the mount. This will be the 4th jockey in 4 races for this horse. Never ideal.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, right as you were saying that, I scrolled over to just kind of point that out. I think that is kind of interesting. I mean, Van Dyke's hurt, but Pratt and Smith decide to look elsewhere. So that is something to consider. Although Corey Nakatani is very capable.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it would be a cool story if this horse was a factor both in the Santa Anita Derby and moving forward into the Triple Crown, because I've always been a big fan of Corey, and it was good to see him back and riding pretty well. So I definitely think this is one of the major contenders in the race. It was interesting. I'm not sure what the optics works had for this horse, but one of the other clockers, Clocker Andy, he's been spot on this horse, but before the San Vicente, he was against the horse, said it wasn't doing well, training well coming into the race. And then the next race, he had a more positive view of how the horse was training and ended up running well in that race. So I'd be interested to see how this horse is doing according to clockers like Toby and Donald and Andy and whatnot as he comes into the race.
Well, I will say again it's early, so I don't have the workout for this race up yet. But in the new grid, we have the workouts that are right next to the trip notes. And this horse was in his, and we cluster the works together, so it's like the series of works going into the race versus each individual work. So on debut, he was working heads up with He Will, which is kind of an older horse, and then the same thing on going into the San Vicente B work there, and then had a B solid work. So it's a horse that, according to our work, seems to always train well in the morning. The solid doesn't look like he worked in company like he did the other 2, but you like to see that. It's a horse that's is athletic, shows up in the morning and the afternoon. But yeah, we'll have those works out usually 24 hours ahead of time, and they'll fill kind of right into the grid.
Yeah, I think real quick, I just think that's a great part of the optics work product is how you do cluster them together, and it's not. So you get an idea of if the horse is a morning glory or if it's a horse that's actually moving forward. So great quality.
Yeah, I mean that's the most important thing of the works is it all kind of translates into form cycle and the idea with our platform of everything being integrated, and you want to see how that horse is, and that kind of actually works to transition into the number 4, Comma Sister, who is not a flashy workout. This horse is in the mornings. Always for those 3 starts, always a C+, kind of average pressure, outworked, but seems to run a little bit in the afternoon. And I just think overall this horse is just below. I mean, really has to take a step forward. Is ambitiously spotted in grade 1. Off the notes, looks like a horse that's probably going to be a router, but hard to kind of give the push for this horse in this spot.
I think this horse will probably be 50-1, and I think it would be one of the biggest shockers in Santa Anita Derby history, if not the biggest.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. All right, and I'm never a fan of the double AF line, but again, yeah, I agree with you. Probably a 50-1 shot. The number 5, I was kind of intrigued by this horse because we did the Risen Star video that this horse scratched out of. I was pretty interested in this horse, and I think it was just post position worried me. because I like this horse ran in the Golden Gate, that Cal Derby, although that race has been absolutely horrendous since. I did like the way the horse ran there. And then, in the Gotham, just kind of a no-show effort, but was very fractious in the gate. And so, if anything, you're just kind of drawing, if you want to just kind of draw a line through that race, maybe an interesting type. I would expect this horse to be a big price. I wish that Cal Derby had come up somewhat decent, and I think I'm being pretty nice about that because I thought his effort was good. So one of the longer type horses, but there was some things that I can be a little bit forgiving on.
Yeah, this horse has a nice turn of foot. Whether he's going to be able to carry it to this class level and 2 turns is a little bit of a question still. The Cal Derby was over the synthetic track at Golden Gate, so that's another thing to maybe keep in mind. This horse wouldn't be shocking, especially if they go fast up front, but maybe a couple of the top ones in here.
Yeah, the best figure was on the synthetic, so it's hard to say, and then, if you toss the last 84, 82 in those 2 sprint races, are, going to have to move forward from. So, if you're really needing a bomb in a tournament to close it out, might be one of the horses that you look towards. All right, the number 6 American Anthem, and this horse is interesting. I'll kind of talk about the Rebel real quick because this horse was favored that day and kind of just looks like a line-through race. I know he did throw a shoe in that race, so that might have played a factor. But this horse is wide and just kind of dropped out. It just didn't get a good trip. But it's important to note this horse just looked like, one, he wasn't handling the track and wasn't handling kickback. So I think it's important for this horse to get his trip, to kind of get position early, get out from behind horses and kind of into the clear. But I can be a little bit forgiving on that last race, all things considered.
Yeah, the horse broke flat-footed too, so which it was not in its past performances, so it shouldn't be assumed that he has gait trouble. You put Martin Garcia on, who obviously isn't at the class of Mike Smith at this point, but in terms of getting horses out of the gate, he is one of the better ones on the circuit. So I think that's good. I agree with you in terms of, I think that last race was a toss. I don't think anything went his way. Like you said, the kickback. I wasn't aware of throwing a shoe. That's another one. This horse has ability. I think you can toss that last race. And if you like this horse and want to include him in horizontals or even bet him to win, you might get a decent price. I know that he's been always thought of as one of the better Baffert horses outside of Mastery, and there's no reason to think that if Baffert's putting him in this spot that he's not going to run much better.
Yeah, I think an improved effort is to be expected. I would imagine this is one of the horses that will be close to the favorite. I'll go back to the race, the Sham, that was in the slop. He got an A- grade and showed grit. John was doing the notes that day, and his extended comment on there just kind of questioned whether this horse is kind of a classic distance horse. So, if the price is short, that might be something, along with the trip that I'd put into consideration, but capable to take a move forward and draw a line through that last. The number 7, Kim Bear, to me just looks like another horse is just a little bit below. Never cracked a 90. Horse seems to work well in the morning, so when you see glowing workout reports, that's who this horse is. Probably fine to stretch out on dirt, but class test here has me concerned.
Very fair point. I think if you're really looking for a price at the back end, I think this horse might get one of the better trips if Talamo can get him in a good spot early. The distance of 1 1/8 is certainly a question coming out of 3 sprints. But I think you could do worse at a horse that's probably going to be every bit of 30 to 1. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I think the horse has talent. I definitely think, winning the race is a little bit out of the question, but picking up the pieces is not to me.
So if you're talking about trip on the standard plot here, Kimber is a square in quadrant 2, so a good position and just kind of opening quad stat. Again, this is kind of a new product that goes along with optics plot. Quadrant 2 squares, they win at 20%, so that's 5 wins and 25 starts. I would say from a trip perspective, that would be positive. And again, you're going to absolutely get price there. Could get the right trip, but has to take a step forward from the speed and class perspective. My opinion there. All right. The number 8 Gormley. I kind of thought maybe exposed is the right word for this horse last time. Sort of going into the race, I felt he's probably better a little bit shorter, probably turf, and kind of, probably going to take money. I think we saw there was only 2 horses we knew morning lines for, this horse being 9-2 as a second choice. It is not exciting to me. I know you kind of liked this horse last time, so what do you think about him here?
Yeah, last time was probably the final time for me, at least in a race like this, because mainly to me, being there for both of the last 2 races, the Sham and the San Felipe, both of those times this horse got washy. This horse does not strike me as a horse that's going to handle bigger crowds well. And, obviously the Derby is the biggest of crowds, but there'll be a nice crowd on hand for this race on Saturday. Just seems to not be the same horse, that I saw as a 2-year-old who was a striking individual. Maybe some of it is the distance you're talking about. Maybe it's just class. Maybe he's just one of those horses that peaked at 2. But to me, until I can see this horse, relax before the race, it's hard for me to think he's going to put forth his best effort in a race.
Yeah, and as far as the plot goes, he's kind of in the cluster of those horses in quadrant 1, and small circle in there, so it's not terrible, but he looks to get a similar trip with other horses. And if what you're riding is kind of a nervous horse, that's probably not going to be an ideal trip. And I know you've commented about this on Espinoza. He's not one that's probably going to try to save ground, so probably going to be outside of horses. To me, trip and just kind of overall getting that extra ground, I wouldn't take a short price. Anything else? We'll move on to.
Yeah, he just hasn't passed horses, so either really in his life. He had the ideal trip that you mentioned when we did it last time in the front runner. I think this is a horse that it seems like both of us are going to be willing to let beat us.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on to the number 9. This is the horse that we said John White's Twitter handle had this horse as a 7-2 morning line favorite. I think that this horse is a contender, but I was really surprised to see that he has this horse as the favorite. I guess just because he finished second to Mastery. That's kind of that's kind of it. The one thing that did strike me about this horse, I'll kind of put it sort of 2 ways. Was in the lane when this horse was getting hit with the whip, he completely resisted it. Tails flashing, did not like that, and it's not necessarily like a kiss of death, but with the horse that that has that type of behavior, this horse has to get a perfect ride. Beholder comes to mind because she was kind of the same way, that she didn't like to get hit the whip, so you had to kind of keep her in a perfect spot, make the right move, keep her clear outside of horses, that type of thing. So that's one of my concerns with him, taking a short price. But I do find that this horse is a contender. Again, I was surprised he was a morning line favorite.
That's good information regarding the whip. Usually you're the one to point this out, so maybe and you're really good at it. But to me, I don't know. I think this horse is going to be better served going 1 turn. Well, I thought that in the San Vicente and the San Felipe. Granted, when you're chasing a horse that was as talented as Mastery, sometimes that can take it, the wind out of you, if you will. And it really has nothing to do with the distance. It's the quality of horse you're chasing. but I don't know if I see this horse being a horse that moves forward with added ground. I also, I mean, I guess that's the best thing, and then that combined with the price, I just don't really see the separation in this horse. Although, speed figures, I'm not sure in terms of optic speed figures where he stands in relation to the field or how much it matters to you because it's only been one two-turn race. But he does have good speed figures and has been consistent. I just have some concerns, and in a large field like this, it just doesn't seem to make sense to take a short price horse if you have any concerns at all.
Yeah, I agree on that on principle. As far as the distance question goes, I'm on the fence about it. I'm not really pushed one way or another. After this race, I hopefully be able to kind of figure that out a little bit more concrete. So yeah, I'm either way. I'm willing to see you. That's why I'm sort of the same opinion as you. A short price, I would be kind of looking elsewhere. Go to these outside horses that we talked about a little bit, just kind of being somewhat of a pace factor. I guess not the 10 so much, but what did I say, 11, 12, 13, I guess?
Yeah.
Well, actually, maybe this horse, right? Because he is stretching out. Now that I notice these are all sprints, that might be why he was closer to the pace. Just again, another horse that just looks a little bit below, coming out of the state bred races, the first time in a graded stake, only the second time facing open company. Just looks too much of an outsider.
Yeah, I mean the fourth of the O'Neill horses, I don't know which one they really think is going to. Obviously, they might like Iliad the best, but there's four of them, and I never really loved that. State bred races is where he's done his best running. Sprinting, that doesn't really do much for me. Not really seeing the pedigree I like to move forward going longer. And Tiago Pereira from an outside post in one of the biggest races he's ever ridden. Not sure how that's going to work out, but I'm not optimistic. So this is one of the extreme outsiders to me.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we'll move to the number 11 that you talked about coming out of that same optional claiming race. I'll let you start. What did you think about this horse?
Well, I know, I was impressed with this horse's debut. Only, it wore down a group that included Royal Mo and a few others at Del Mar, and it was kind of grindy, but it kind of made me think that this horse would do better going longer. And then we didn't see him for, I guess, nearly over 6 months. Had apparently been working well from what I heard on March, not going into that race, and stalked and really came up empty. He's going to have to move forward a tremendous amount to be competitive in here. I think he can move forward, but the outside post, Bejarano struggles at times to get out of the box. That concerns me. Then seeing him rushed up. I think there's better spots for this horse. However, once again, I always give a little bit of credence to Bob Baffert when he runs horses in spots like this because he doesn't overspot his horses a lot. That being said, I think if this horse ran fourth, it would be, a job well done and a worthwhile spotting for him. So maybe underneath, but really needs to move forward.
Yeah, I think if you took the Bob Baffert Bejarano names out of the equation, this horse would probably also be closer to that 30 to 1 mark. Maybe he will be. Just you have the top connection, so you kind of don't know. But this horse really has to move forward. Optics figures 83 on at that Del Mar race. Again, that was a 2-year-old figure, so maybe low 90s is kind of somewhere in there. 79 last time out. In that race, thought he was wide in there. I also thought this horse might be his best on turf. Both those you talked about the workouts. The optics workout has given this horse a B+ in going into both those races. Player best, so a horse that's showing off in the morning, catching the eye. Needs to move forward. Maybe gets overbet off connections. So that would be concern. I'm just gonna click over the plot real quick and just kind of see where he is. It's not on standard. Real favorable, being a circle down in quadrant 4. So you would be picking this horse off off a lot of projection, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you feel like the race is wide open. There's just not a whole lot of like, concrete stuff to kind of latch onto with this horse, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. The only part that I'm not sure about is maybe the horse looks like turf, but it's not like Baffert to really run his best horses over the turf. So I'm not sure if we'll ever even see that for this barn. But yeah, I mean, he's the kind of horse that if I'm spreading to several horses, in a pick 4, pick 3, whatever the scenario, that I might, throw in because of the value and because of it, understanding that Baffert is capable of moving horses a lot forward quite a bit. But like you said, it's pretty stabby.
We'll go to outside. Couple more horses here. The number 12, Midnight Pleasure. Another horse that's just kind of, second off a layoff, to be fair, but optics figure wise has not really taken that step forward. Last time out, sprinting, the jock dropped a whip and then kind of had some flow to kind of run at. Again, a horse that just needs to take another step forward, and then from a trip perspective, they're gonna have to use early. Not likely to save much ground, so a wide trip, having to move forward, kind of a stab here. The 2 times in Grade 1 races, C plus, B minus, so kind of below from a class standpoint. What was your take on this horse?
Yeah, I think the horse is an outsider. I think the one thing important to note, if you're looking back at the Del Mar races where he was most successful, this barn was going very well back then. Mick Rui's daughter was training. All of their horses were firing, and that's not the case these days. Mick Ruiz hasn't won a race this year.
Right? Not daughter, sister.
There's 2 Mick Ruizes, a father and a son. I know that I know it's a family enterprise, and I know that they removed Shelby, who's the daughter of one of them. But maybe you might be correct in terms of this Mick. Anyway, I think that's important to note that the barn was going super well then and isn't going super well now, and all of the other things you mentioned. This horse to me is a complete outsider.
Yeah. Number 13, Royal Mo. I found this horse was interesting. Again, it's another one I can forgivably draw a line through the Rebel being wide and then just kind of not asked to run from there. So nothing more than kind of a half mile jog. Trip. I don't know what they're gonna have to send, right? I mean, they're gonna have to send and just hope for the best.
Yeah, interesting rider change for good or for bad. I'll leave that up to the individual. Espinoza, who's been struggling this year, to Gary Stevens. Espinoza opts for Gormley. The other Sheriff's runner, you would assume, I would assume he'd have that choice. I don't know for sure. I had a little bit more trouble by watching that race excusing this horse, unless you're just saying he didn't like the Oaklawn surface or maybe didn't like shipping. I thought that he got into a decent spot and just stopped. What was it that made you forgive that last voyage?
It's not. I don't have it as an excuse, so I'm not forgiving it. But I'm being forgiving just because it's
that's fair.
Because it's wide. A wide trip. Oakland's kind of weird.
Sure.
Maybe there was something in the ship the horse didn't like, whatever, and then just wasn't asked to run the last. It wasn't like they were, really, once he kind of gave up position, just sort of stopped riding on him. So, yeah, being more forgiving, but the trip just seems really tough for me. Those kind of best races, Maiden Breaker and Robert B. Lewis being inside and saving ground and being able to do what he does best, being forwardly placed. Here where they're gonna kind of have to use. I guess what I'm saying about that last race is he's capable to move forward off that. But yeah, it's
definitely
a reach.
And that was a big effort off the bench in the Robert Lewis. It was not a good field. It was a really poor Grade 3 field, but he did it well that day, and I was pretty impressed came back. I was down by the winner's circle after the race. It was a nice looking horse, and I did get the feeling that this horse was ready to be competitive in races like this. So what you're saying is true in terms of forgiving, but not really no excuse, just kind of a toss. Maybe regress some with it between the ship and the big effort off the bench.
Yeah.
Do you like the? I'm looking at him on the standard plot where he's kind of situated. Do you like where he is situated?
So it's not terrible. I mean, it's kind of a plot that I look at this plot and I don't really see, anything that's like real strong. That he could win from there. He could win from that plot position, without a doubt. So I'm not knocking it, but from that post position, they're gonna have to go to use. Maybe they have to use a little bit too much, but it's not terrible. Why? What did your?
No, I was just curious where I looked at it. I mean, I'm looking at this plot. To me, obviously, I consider myself good at reading them, but I'm not an expert like you. It's just interesting. Nothing really sticks out to me is, that perfect plot. Battle of Midway, maybe if you can avoid getting clustered. It's a small square up in, the quadrant one, I think is a little interesting, but it's a lot of clustering, and it's a 13 horse field or 13, and it's going to take probably more than just getting an easy read on this plot, right?
Yeah, I think it's important when you don't have a plot where you have kind of have a horse just sort of that's like a standout or a real obvious pace scenario. You'd want to be using the quad stat. Look for anything that's kind of real negative. Match it up with the running lines. I think it's kind of important just to kind of see that those horses are clustered. That if the winner does come from there, it's going to have to be a horse that shows some kick. It's a horse that's going to have to be able to finish. The surface distance kind of gets everything a little bit more pushed to the left-hand side. So, some of those horses kind of stretching out for the first time or coming out of sprint races might be a little bit closer. It's hard. I think the plot gives you a lot of good information here, but there's not oh, well, that horse looks like he's going to sit a great trip like we had with the Louisiana Derby with Gervin, where he was just kind of a huge square kind of sitting there this horse looks pretty legit on the plot.
Right. Yeah, sounds about what I would think as well. So good to hear you say that.
Yeah. So I think I mean this race is it's an interesting race. I'll be interested to see the morning lines, and then of course how they bet it. I think sometimes when you have optics such as we're a newer product and we have things a little bit different. Sometimes when you see a morning line that with your information it just doesn't match up. So it'll be kind of interesting to see the morning line and see how they end up betting this race. Did you have any final thoughts about this race or just anything in general?
Well, no, I mean, I'm just kind of digging in for the first time into this race and getting into Saturday's card, and haven't really come up with, my final thoughts or predictions, if you will. If you want to see, where I end up tomorrow, and as we go into Saturday, I will have both a how to wager on the Santa Anita Derby on Twinspires.com, as well as a look into the late pick 4 that involves this race. So that'll be when I finalize my thoughts a little more. But I see it as a very difficult race to come up with one horse that you're really going to be excited about. I could see as a win, if you're a win better, I would definitely at this point look towards betting a horse that's an overlay or higher on the that ends up being higher on the board just because there's so many contenders. If you're playing horizontal wagers or trifectas, then obviously you're going to be more willing to use some of the logical horses in there as well.
Right. Okay, well, cool. I know you'll tweet that out. I'll retweet it. I'll post this video as soon as possible. It'll be up on Twitter. I recorded earlier the Grade 1 Madison over at Keeneland. hopefully getting around to doing the bluegrass video, and then what, next week we'll have another prep. Do you know what next week is?
I think it's the Arkansas Derby.
Arkansas Derby. Okay,
And
yeah.
then,
Where's
yeah, and
that?
then I guess we can, start talking Kentucky Derby from there.
Right. Well, we'll have to do something to occupy our time. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. Of course, subscribe. Check out Scott's sheet over at Twinspires. Optics, we always run our weekend package. The plot, it's a great value monthly plot. You get plot and grid, $80, and then of course. With the notes, it's $180 for a month. Actually, if you sign up for a month starting Saturday, that'll get you notes or plot or whatever monthly package you get. That'll get you covered all the way through the Derby. So keep that in mind. And we're going to do some special stuff for, we've kind of talked about an optics meeting for the Derby that'll be free to all of our subscribers. So something to think about. Of course, message me on Twitter or leave comments below if you have any